This is the MeatEater podcast coming at you shirtless, severely bug-bitten, and in my case, underwearless.
We hunt the MeatEater podcast.
You can't predict anything.
The MeatEater podcast is brought to you by First Light. Whether you're checking trail cams, hanging deer stands, or scouting for elk, First Light has performance apparel to support every hunter in every environment. Check it out at firstlight.com. FIRSTLITE.com. Joined today by our first ever, I think this is our first ever.
First.
Definitely. Our first ever guest who is from a Native American, tribal, reservation, however you want to put it, a reservation fish and game agency. We've had all kind of fish and game people from the States, right? But we've never had a tribal fish and game official. And people are going to learn a lot about how this works, and will probably, and a lot of people, particularly in the eastern United States, will be surprised about the level of sovereignty on large tracts of western lands for reservations. Arthur, do people call you Arthur?
Art.
They do call you Art?
Yep.
And you brought along your wife, Renee.
Yep.
Okay. And Arthur, you're Northern Arapaho, but you married a Sioux. Oglala Sioux
Lakota.
woman.
Yep.
And this is not frowned upon. This was arranged.
Somewhat. We're more of like a blind date, but then ended up after, our parents must have known something. So we call ourselves an arranged marriage.
Was it common for Northern Arapaho before you two met? Was it common that Northern Arapaho would marry Oglala Sioux? Was that like a common union?
Yeah, actually, we have a long history of the Northern Cheyenne, the Arapaho, and the Lakota people summering together and meeting in like when nomadic lifestyle meeting and stuff and summering together. So we already had a strong familial relationship with those tribes and stuff, and they were like the allies with each other. So
got it. If you go into our restroom down here, you might miss it because you won't be at the urinal. Were you to visit the urinal, you would see a painting called Here Fell Custer, and it's all Custer's guys and their kind of moment of death, at the Little Bighorn battlefield, and then down the hill you can see the large encampment. Were Northern Arapaho
Yep.
present?
the Northern Arapaho, the Cheyenne, and the Sioux were there.
Is it? I've always wanted to hear someone who actually knows pronounce this. Is it Unk Papa Sioux?
Hunk Papa Sioux, yeah.
Hunk Papa Sioux, and you're a Oglala Sioux. Crazy Horse was a Oglala Sioux, right?
Crazy Horse was Oglala.
Okay.
Yeah.
Say it again.
Oglala.
Oglala. Got it. And you were brought up on the Pine Ridge Reservation.
No, actually,
Oh, you were not. Okay, I'm sorry.
I was born there, but my mom and stepdad. My mom met my stepdad on the Wind River Reservation, and she worked for Indian Health Service. And then we moved from there, and we moved to different places. We lived on the Navajo Reservation, where my stepdad taught school for a couple of years, and then moved down to the Phoenix area, and that's where I ended up going through high school. And then we moved back to the Wind River Reservation after I graduated high school, so that my stepdad could help with my grandpa's ranch and help with the cows and stuff. And so my parents own a ranch on out in Kinnear, Wyoming, and then we met each other, and he went to school out in Kinnear, and just been there ever since.
And what'd you study in school, Art?
Well, I first started in HVAC, just working a trade and stuff like that. I come from an area where it's either ranching, farming, oil field.
Yep.
That's all we knew in central Wyoming. And so I left, went to Denver, Colorado for a while, and then moved back home to the reservation.
And your reservation, we're going to get into the, don't sweat if you're at home wondering about the whole fish and game thing. We're going to get to that. But Wind River Reservation, there's a couple things here. If you keep going, this has always kind of surprised me. If you're on the Bighorn River and you go up the Bighorn River, it goes through a canyon and all of a sudden it's the Wind River.
The wedding of the waters.
The wedding of the waters. And that's where, and that right there is in the country where you guys have your reservation.
Yep.
And when your reservation was formed, they put Shoshone, the Shoshone tribe, in with the Northern Arapaho.
So they put the Northern Arapaho were further south in Colorado, Oklahoma, and those different areas. It was during the winter, they were pushing Northern Arapahos back east to Oklahoma. And on the way up, there was a Sand Creek massacre where the cavalry killed a bunch of tribal members. And they pushed them up north, and then for the winter, they landed on the Wind River Indian Reservation where the Eastern Shoshone tribe was established.
Okay.
And then the spring, they were supposed to move the Arapahos back down to Oklahoma, but that never happened. The government pretty much said, you're staying here and you're going to live with the Shoshones and you're going to be 50% owners of this reservation.
Well, how did the Shoshones take that?
At first, probably not too happy.
Because all of a sudden it's like, okay, you have this. Well, now you don't.
So right before,
now you both have this.
Well, a couple of years prior to that, the Eastern Shoshone Reservation was only 30 million acres long. Now, 4 years later, it was down to 2.5 acres. And then a couple of years after that, then they moved in the Northern Arapaho tribe to live with them and then be part ownership of the rest of the reservation.
And how many acres is it now?
2.2 million.
And it was how many at a time?
30 million.
So that's roughly the size of Yellowstone National Park, right? Isn't
Yes.
that close?
Yeah.
Had prior to the Sand Creek massacre, what had been the relationship with the Shoshone and Northern Arapaho?
Traditionally, they were enemies.
Yeah, because
So-
the Shoshone were more like in the 1800s. The Shoshone were sort of more welcoming of white intrusion, right? And the Northern Arapaho had a history of being more resistant to white intrusion, like in the 1800s. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. I mean,
Yeah.
they also went through their own massacres too. And then that population dropped radically with the massacres. And then they were placed onto then they started working with the non-natives and the cavalry and everything else, becoming scouts and stuff because they were getting benefits of doing that. And then until, everything else happened, the Sand Creek Massacre and Arapaho showed up, and then they just became owners of one landscape.
Yeah. How? I'm gonna ask one last question, then we're gonna take a break from it and talk about pre-chewed food. You guys have kids?
We do.
You ever, when they were little babies, did you ever chew up food and then hand it to them to eat?
With elk meat, yeah.
Oh.
We're gonna get into that in a minute.
Yes, I did.
Elk, mule deer, antelope.
Okay, so you'll know exactly what we're talking about in a second here. We're gonna touch on a couple things, but how? This is. I'm trying to think of how to put this question. How much? How? Let me preface. I'm getting there. I'm trying to think of how to ask a semi-sensitive question, but it's not terribly sensitive. And I'll start with this. I hunted turkeys down in Mississippi this past spring. Okay. And was surprised that like in wandering around in Mississippi, every day someone would mention the war. And they were talking about the Civil War. Before the war, right? Or like after the war. Do you know what I mean? And I'd be like, I cannot believe the way this is like when I hear the war, when I say the war, I'm thinking whiskey too. Because like my dad was in it. But when they're talking about the war, I'm like, oh my God, they're talking about like before the Civil War, who owned that? Or after the Civil War, who built that reservoir? You know, whatever. You know what I'm saying? How much, like in your culture, how much are the atrocities like Sand Creek Massacre, Wounded Knee, how how much are they mentioned and discussed and remembered? Is it a part of daily life?
It's not part of a daily life, but it's something that the tribes bring up and never will forget. When we work with the government and we go over different projects and everything else that we do, we bring stuff up like that to show our sovereignty, and we're our own nation and we can do things differently than what the U.S. government has planned for us. And so, we it comes up, but we don't dwell on it. Mm-hmm. We talk about reservations, but traditionally, tribes are not reservation Indians. We migrated with the wildlife.
Yeah.
It's definitely memorialized and remembered, and in a sense that it's not something that we will never forget, and we will never allow anybody else to forget that those atrocities happened, because by diminishing what our ancestors had gone through to put us here makes minimizing it makes it easy for further atrocities to happen, and it's not something that we want to allow to happen to us again. Yeah. So that's kind of the thing where we're not going to let anybody forget that the Sand Creek Massacre occurred, or that there were only women and elders and children when Wounded Knee happened that were in the camp and they were slaughtered. We're not going to allow those types of things to ever be forgotten, because we don't ever want those things to be able to reoccur for our people, because our ancestors did so much survived for so long for us to be here today. So.
Yeah, and I don't think it'd be silly for someone to expect otherwise, especially when you look at like how thoroughly our culture memorializes catastrophes, wars,
right,
sacrifice, mm-hmm. right? I mean, it's like
absolutely.
totally baked into our culture. But then it looks when you see a culture within our culture or a neighboring culture do it, there's a tendency for people to be like, they're living in the past. It's like, dude, have you been to Arlington Cemetery? Have you been to Gettysburg? Like, this is not living in the past,
When you were holding reenactments
mm-hmm.
of those battles and stuff,
Yeah. Are you ready to talk about pre-chewed food?
Sure. Hang on. This is
this is the thing.
This is what you're really here for.
This is why we brought you from Wyoming.
No, the other day I mentioned, I kind of mentioned it like it was a little bit like people might think we were nuts, but we used to chew like the first, it was very, like when our kids got to be about 9 months old, every one of them, we'd start giving them chewed up deer meat. And we were laughing about that, but we got a bunch of people not a bunch, a handful of people wrote in about pre-chewed food. Pat Durkin wrote in that his mom and paternal grandmother, they've been feeding their infants that way going back that far. And he remembers Granny being disgusted with Durkin and his siblings thinking it was gross when she would pre-chew their food. And she called them spoiled. He claims Pat claims that that's a Saturday Night Live skit, which he was not able to locate. He remembers that it had Gilda Radner in it, and they were eating at a restaurant called Pre-Chewed Charlie's on the skit. And the waiter would chew meat and then put it on your plate. He was unable to locate. The skit. Dr. Max Kerr.
I believe it's
like
Max Kerr.
Yeah, that everyone knows glass jars.
Oh,
mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, they're kind of like the Band-Aid glass jars.
Yeah, right.
Well, a lot of people prefer Kerr jars.
Mm-hmm.
Kerr. How do you say it? Kerr.
I think it's Kerr.
Kerr.
Yeah. My late friend and mentor, Ron Layton, was a Kerr jar man, not ball. Hope I don't get a mean letter from Ball Jars, like a cease and desist from Bald. Yeah, Kerr jars. He's written in before. We actually just met him at MeatEater Experiences in Venice, Louisiana. He came out. He's excited about his day of offshore fishing that I missed which is depressing.
We all missed that.
And I believe there's tuna for me somewhere. I haven't seen it.
There is. I've got it for you.
You do?
Yep.
Where?
In the freezer, like right outside.
This is so off topic for us, but I'm going to get into it anyways.
It's hilarious.
Because it was brought on by the idea of chewing up deer meat and giving it to your baby.
I don't think it's off topic. All kinds of animals chew up their food and let it sit in their stomach and then
that's true.
regurgitate it.
Yeah, baby.
How bad is chewing up your food?
I always call that baby birding.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
sure.
Yeah.
Oh, we should
Chewing
hit,
a cud. We had a
should-
conversation about cud chewing at dinner the other night.
We should hit that on a kids segment.
Mm-hmm.
Kids podcast.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I keep meaning to bring those pigeons down here.
Is that pigeon still shitting it on your foot?
They've
On
got-
your,
they've
you
got
know
pet
what's so
pigeons,
funny, man?
guys.
I need to send you. There's a video. I should find it. Yeah. So my kids got these baby pigeons out of a nest, and they roost like when you go up to our front door. There's like, what do you call it when you got a little cover?
foyer or
No, foyer is like inside.
Yeah, that's in
A
porch.
stoop.
Awning.
Porch. No, stoop, I think, is what you
An
sit
entry.
on.
Awning
Yeah.
cover.
Yeah. A
There's
covered, entryway.
There's a covered entry,
Yeah.
and
Probably what it says in
they
the HOA.
roost in the covered entry. And my wife needs to apologize to every person that comes to our door because they are standing in a mountain of pigeon shit.
Oh no.
She calls us the shitrellas. Shitnellas. It's terrible. But when my kids were raising those birds up, like pigeons regurgitate. They eat their food and they produce this kind of milk substance. And so when they were raising them up, we were taking sunflower seeds and mixing with almond milk and putting it through a dropper. This guy's a doctor, and he's talking about he's a DDS.
Dentist.
Yeah. He was saying that babies, in order to build your jaw and all that, they need what he calls resistance training, which is the same as weightlifting. Babies should be chewing on all kind of stuff. It's very important.
Yep.
Breastfeeding is better than a rubber nipple because the sucking effect and the swallowing muscles develop. You know what's a real problem that I didn't know about? Is kids sucking all their food out of those little
Pouches.
bags.
Yep. Squeezers, we call them.
Yep. It's prolong the advent of that highly processed squeezer is prolonging how long children take before they start to masticate. So you can picture in the future a bunch of weak-jawed.
I read that article. I was
Individuals.
fascinated by it.
It was in the LA Times.
And it can-
I just
it
couldn't
can,
stop laughing from a few days ago. It's incredible.
It can stunt their speech development because they don't develop the right coordination.
Yeah, there's just like
I'm not buying it.
Sucking on baby.
You're not buying it. Listen, man.
You got to talk to Dr. Max.
Like
Guess
maybe
since
if they keep
2010.
eating those things nonstop into adulthood.
That's
but
what's
Well,
happening.
that's what
Dude,
they're saying is that people
when
are
my
using
kids,
them out
when those
to like
came
they're
out, I
5 or
started
6.
eating the sons of bitches.
I still do. I had one yesterday.
I'll be like, sure, I'll take a little applesauce.
I think, if that's all they ate, maybe this could happen. But like,
We were camping with some folks 2 weekends ago, I guess, and they had 2 kids, and at one point she turns to the kids and she says, "What do we remember about our pouches?" And they both were very dead serious, and they said, "We only get one per day." Just like,
Since 2010,
That makes
pouch
sense, though.
it's
consumption,
like a currency.
food pouch consumption since 2010 has increased 900%.
but before there
Overtaking-
was none. So
No,
it's like
overtaking jarred puree as the predominant baby food on the market. That's true. When you go from something not existing to
Yeah.
existing, it is a big jump. That'd be another way to put it.
Automobile use has skyrocketed since 1500.
Yeah,
but I
that's
think
great.
it probably existed before 2010, so it was maybe.
Too many of these, and it's also a highly processed food. I'm a big Mad Max fan, and Mother's Milk plays heavily in the Mad Max movies.
It does.
And we were laughing the other day. Yanni not a Mad Max fan, but I always like to point out Yanni used to drink a lot of the mother's milk. So my wife would freeze the little bags of it, you know. And I remember for years being real curious before I finally had a little swig. But Yanni was putting the stuff in his coffee the whole time.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh.
That was his half and half all through having babies.
That's my favorite noise Corinne makes is,
I think that means what else you got?
No, I'm just
trying
waiting.
not to be judgmental, but I'll get curious.
No, yeah.
He probably has a really good immune system.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
I
he
think he
does.
does.
Yeah.
I think,
It's friendly too.
wasn't there something about,
He's very generous.
Wasn't there
Very
something
generous
about-
of spirit.
like a ceremonial placenta consumption?
Oh yeah, he did that.
Did he do that too?
I think he did.
Put it in a pie or a lasagna or something?
That's right.
Yeah, I think
Which is
he
like,
did.
yeah, that's right. We talk
A
about this because it's like,
lasagna.
Yeah.
it's like a way to have cannibalism that's not bad.
Oh, hello.
Hang
It's
on,
not
guys.
frowned
This will
upon.
be over
Trust
soon, I
us.
promise.
Yeah, we'll get back to you.
These people are really starting to wonder
Here.
about coming up here.
Only one last thing to talk about. Do we want to get into do we Brody,
We
how
can-
quickly can you do your Colorado thing?
I can do it quick.
Okay, do it real quick.
This popped up in my news feed. Mancos, Colorado, southern Colorado. Bunch of angry town residents tore down miles of fencing that had barbed wire fence that a mysterious religious group had blocked off 1,400 acres of National Forest Service land.
For what reason?
They claimed it was theirs under the Homesteading Act, but the Homesteading Act was repealed 50 years ago, 1970s, everywhere except Alaska. I think it went on for a while longer.
And they had Homestead Act 1,400 acres?
They just said it was theirs.
It doesn't really, yeah. There's no real legitimate basis.
Basically,
to it.
they're squatting on public land, right?
Oh, and they're like the kind of people, they're like, you know what? I've done
Yeah.
some reading and I don't have to pay taxes.
They're like a sort of a splinter group when Warren Jeffs got
Yeah, the Free
All the way.
Landholders Committee, they call
Got it,
themselves.
okay.
yeah.
But a bunch of people in the town kind of got fed up with that public land being fenced off and went in there and tore it down.
No one started shooting at each other.
No
or anything?
shooting, but it's a heated thing, and the sheriff's office is kind of staying out of it. They're not they're saying it's a civil issue, and so they're not arresting anyone for putting the fence up. They're not arresting anyone for tearing it down.
How long ago was the fence put up?
It doesn't say, but it sounds like it's been around for a while.
So one day the whole town's like, let's go tear that fence
I think
down.
they're like, it's blocking access. They hunt there, they fish there, they
Got it.
run motorcycles, snowmobiles, all that stuff. They're worried someone's going to get hurt by the barbed wire fence. They're worried about the barbed wire fence affecting big game travel, stuff like that. But nothing's like, they haven't kicked these people off of the National Forest Service land.
They just got rid of their fence.
Got rid of their fence, and it's to be determined what's going to happen, if these people will actually be kicked off that land or not. So it's an ongoing issue.
It's so odd that this was picked up in the Miami Herald.
I know, it just popped up in my news feed. Like, I looked around and didn't see too much. It just happened. This all went down just like a couple weeks ago.
Starting November 4th, this is the last thing we're going to talk about.
Before we talk about what you're here to talk about,
Then the show's over.
Yeah.
You guys can drive back.
What are we talking about?
Starting November 4th, we got a new show called Rough Cuts with me. Dropping on Outdoor Channel and MeatEater YouTube. So it'll 8 p.m. every Monday. Starting November 4th and presented by Moultrie. Okay. So we kind of covered off on that. What year we covered off on the tribal history, but I want to back up now and get into this real good. What year was, or roughly when was the Wind River Reservation established?
That was established in I think it was in the 1860s.
Okay.
It was before the state of Wyoming even became a state.
68, I believe.
68.
Not to step on your toes, but
No,
I did a
I
little
think
bit of
you're right.
research.
1860 something. And
Yeah.
then,
And at that time, it was 30 million acres.
For a couple of years, yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it was 2.
Yep. It was like 3, and then a few other things happened where Burrow rec came in and government agencies started taking some land. They opened it up for homesteading for non-natives in the area.
Okay.
There's a Reclamation Act that came in where you'll hear about the Bighorn water rights and stuff, the tribal waters and everything else, the conflict that we're dealing with there. And so when that opened up, at the time, the BIA superintendent wasn't even a tribal member at the time. He was a non-native. And he started selling off portions of the reservation.
Can I interrupt you? Just
Yeah, no, go ahead.
explain what BIA is to people.
BIA is the Bureau of Indian Affairs. My bad. I'm just used to
Yeah.
talking to
Okay.
everybody who knows what BIA is, but
Just for the audience, yeah.
yeah, and then so the Bureau of Indian Affairs was run by non-natives, and then when they came in, they had the ability to sell portions of the land, anything around the rivers, anything that would create
And do
farming.
what with that money?
It was theirs. Whoever sold it got the money. So the superintendent at the time got the money of the land he sold at the time.
It didn't go back to the reservation.
Yeah, there's a lot of fraud and misappropriation of funds and stuff involved in that.
Yeah, and so the whole Bureau of Rec irrigation system on the Wind River Indian Reservation, it doesn't benefit any tribal member on the reservation. Bypasses a lot of the reservation, goes into the Riverton, into the Boyson State Park area, and just bypasses a big portion of the Wind River itself, and goes to agriculture for non-natives. And then, so a lot of that was built and paid for by Bureau of Indian Affairs funding at the time.
So you paid to have the water bypassed.
Tribal members.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
How does in today, how does fishing game management work on your reservation, and is that consistent with reservations at large in the West, like game management?
So every reservation is different. Every landscape is different. On the Wind River Indian Reservation, the Shoshone and Arapaho tribes have the authority to manage their landscape and their wildlife, fish and wildlife. We're one of the only reservations that use U.S. Fish and Wildlife biologists on the reservation to help manage our landscape. And so which is another unique thing, is that we also work pretty good in Indian country for a state and a reservation. That doesn't happen very well on other reservations.
I mean, cooperation between the state and the reservation.
Yes. And so we team up with them with a lot of our grizzly bear studies, our mountain sheep, our bighorn sheep, and everything else that we have on the reservation. We're unique because we really take pride on our conservation efforts on the Wind River Indian Reservation. And so we team up with all these other biologists, and so we work hand in hand with the state and U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
From an enforcement standpoint, you spent years as a warden, right? Like you spent years in law enforcement.
Yeah, I was a Bureau of Indian Affairs police officer, so I was a federal officer, and then I came over to tribal fishing game.
So if a Joe Blow white guy like me went on to Wind River Reservation and poached a bighorn, I'm in trouble not with the state of Wyoming. I'm in trouble with you.
Well, you're in trouble with civilly. Tribal fishing game will come after you for your probably perfect credit score. But then we're gonna come after you federally with Lacey Act charges with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Special Agent. So not only are you civilly charged, so we can charge you twice.
I mean, the tribe can charge me.
Yeah, the tribe can charge you civilly, and then the U.S. Fish and Wildlife will step in and charge you, probably with the felony case.
That would come from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Yes.
Because there's a Lacey violation. Is there a Lacey?
It's a Lacey violation because you're on government land. So the land is still owned by the U.S. government. But we have the ability to manage our own land and our own natural resources.
But I'm familiar with, this is such a rabbit hole, but I'm familiar with the Lacey Act as applying to like moving from one state to the other. But to move on a reservation and off a reservation, does that count as a Lacey Act violation?
No. So you'll have to get a interstate tag, we have to give you permission and everything else to leave. So when you go from one reservation to another reservation, you're just not from one reservation to the other. You're going through state land and everything else. So,
I see. Yep.
So there's an interstate tag that you have to possess with your travels.
Yep. And on the Wind River Reservation, hunting there is tribal members only, correct?
Yes.
And that also is different than that. That's also managed differently on different reservations.
Yeah, some reservations open it up to bring in funding to their programs and everything else like that. On the Wind River Indian Reservation, we're kind of stingy with what we got, but it's also a wintering range for a lot of the elk, mule deer, grizzly bears, wolves, everything else. The wintering range on the reservation, the state benefits on how well we manage our wildlife because we're in central Wyoming. And so a lot of the wildlife surrounding the reservation that, there's no boundaries, there's no reservations to animals. They can come and go as they please. And so when we do better, the state does better with their wildlife.
Yep. And talk about what wildlife you have on the reservation.
Oh, we have
what species?
We pretty much have everything Yellowstone has. After 130 something years, we finally got buffalo back on the reservation, which is huge. That program that Jason Baldez is doing he's doing a really good job at it. And so we have grizzly bears, wolves, wolverines, pronghorn, mule deer, elk, bighorn sheep. Yeah, I mean, you name it, we got it.
Yep. Mountain lions, black bears,
everything. Yeah,
everything. Now probably a good number of wolves.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And how does, for tribal members, how does it work? What is the sort of tag system? You have things that are under quotas and not under quotas. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we have a huge number of white-tailed deer. It's pretty unlimited. Antelope. Nobody really hunts antelope on a reservation, so that's pretty much unlimited. The elk.
That's not a popular animal for members to hunt?
No, because we have, each enrolled tribal member from both tribes gets 4 elk tags a year. You get 3 cow and calf tags, your rifle, bull tag, and then you get your archery.
How many people live on the reservation, and do you know how many are active hunters? Or
we have probably close to 16,000 tribal members from both tribes on the reservation. And we sell about 1,100 to 1,200 hunting permits a year. Mm-hmm. It's not very much at all.
Right.
How much is a hunting permit?
$10 for the permit, $7 per tag. For $132, I think you can get 36 tags or something like that.
Wow. And if someone's working real hard, if someone's working really hard, do they have the ability to get that many elk? Is it like if they put the time in, they could fill that many elk tags?
Oh yeah, pretty easy.
Especially for large families.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we started a program. So our bighorn sheep's limited. There's a quota. We sell very few. That's $100 a tag. The moose quota, that's $100 a tag.
Is that quota? Is that allotted through a lottery?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so what we do is our mule deer is $50. Trophy mule deer, the whole month of November, you get to hunt the trophy mule deer. We do an entry fee to put your application in. It's a $10 fee, and then we start at the beginning of the year and we do the release the information who drew in April. Later on in the year, that gives a chance for everybody to turn in their application. We take that $10 and my program and other programs go out and we harvest elk and everything, or any cases that we get from poaching and stuff, and we get the meat processed, and then we go out and we deliver it to 33 families on the reservation, elders and needy families.
Okay. What are the draw odds?
Way better than state.
But what are the draw odds that a tribal member will draw a bighorn sheep tag?
The odds are going down because the population is going up.
It is?
Oh yeah. So we're trying to get tribal members so involved with our program to support it and build it and make it better. I don't know how many tribal youth are putting in for their sheep and moose and trophy deer and stuff now that they didn't do before.
Okay.
And so it's growing. It's harder and harder. Before I had a pretty good chance. Every 3 years I could draw a sheep tag or a moose tag. Now it's because once you draw, you have to wait 3 years and then you can draw again.
Yeah.
But now with, the number of hunters coming up, it's harder to draw your.
So you've drawn some sheep tags.
I draw a few, yeah.
Congratulations.
Love it. My favorite.
I'm wondering if you can explain a bit more about the different philosophies between different reservations in terms of using, non tribal members as a source of funding. Because it does strike me as, well, like, I think a lot of our listeners probably, when they think about hunting on reservations, they think about like high dollar auction tags, like in Arizona, especially.
Like on the Hickory.
Yeah, like
White
like
River's like
Apache.
50 grand
Yeah, that's
for
probably-
an elk tag.
Was this a conscious decision by the tribes to maintain that resource for tribal members, or sort of how is there pressure to open it up? I'm just kind of curious, like, what that dynamic is like.
Yeah, so there is pressure. I mean, but there's outside pressure
Yeah.
to come in to open it up for that phenomenal hunting area. The tribes, like I said before, our conservation ethics are so important to us that, why not keep it just for ourselves? I mean, when you start bringing in money and opening up that slippery slope of different things happening and losing what you have, maybe it's not even worth the chance of doing it. And so, being a hunter there myself, I love the idea. I don't have to, wait in line or be in a populated area where you go on stateside. But, there's boundaries. And then in one area, I might see one or two tribal members hunting on the side of this creek. On the other creek is state. When we go up and patrol that opening day, there's 300 to 400 vehicles on the state side, maybe one tribal member on our side.
Yeah.
Oh, because they're hoping to pick up elk coming off your.
Migrating back and forth. Yeah.
Gotcha.
How does so like for the state, a lot of the funding for wildlife management comes from license sales. Where are you getting?
So the state gets funding from the license sales. They get funding from taxes from ammunition and stuff like that. The state has other different opportunities that they get different funding from. On Wind River Indian Reservation, we don't have those same opportunities. We don't get any tax money for to help support tribal fishing game program, and no tribes do. So we get a lot of our funding through the Bureau of Indian Affairs. We get a lot of funding through the sale of our fishing permits. We only allow fishing only on the Wind River Indian Reservation, and so we try to market that and use that to bring in more funding. But the U.S. Fish and Wildlife steps in and helps out, and then we've since I've been there, we've kind of reached out and started working with nonprofits and everybody else to go after different types of funding for different types of projects and stuff.
How much does it cost a non-tribal member to fish your reservation?
They're different. I mean, there's daily, weekly, monthly, and annually. And so for about like $190, you can get an annual fishing permit.
Okay. Does your tribe have? We had a Tlingit woman on the show, and we were talking about the Marine Mammal Protection Act, and she is a sea otter hunter. The way the Marine Mammal Protection Act worked is they established what I'm sure you're familiar with the term of blood quantum, meaning that for Alaskan coastal, indigenous coastal Alaskans to participate in marine mammal hunting, they have to demonstrate, I believe it was 25%.
Yeah, or more than
25% ancestry to indigenous coastal Alaskans. How is tribal membership work for you? And then does that have any implication on how you participate in hunting on reservation lands?
So you're talking about a tribal ID card. And yes, we all have tribal ID cards that identifies us as what kind of Indian we are and how much blood quantum we have.
Oh, do you have an ID card on you right now?
I do.
And it says what kind of Indian you are?
Yep. Northern Arapaho.
So if you get pulled over, you can show this to someone?
And is that from the BIA? Or is it from the
Our tribal enrollment office.
Gotcha.
So if I came in and married, I'm already married, so this is just hypothetical, but if I was to come marry a Northern Arapaho woman.
Are you expired?
No.
He's getting in trouble. His card expired.
Pull his badge.
Oh yeah, Northern Arapaho tribe. Arthur Lawson.
Really? Yeah, that's an old name.
Bleep that out. We'll
Do
bleep it.
now.
Oh, degree of blood. You're kidding me.
Nope.
What?
Mm-hmm.
There's a number on there too.
You get a serial
That's
number?
It's our serial number.
It's so it's like being prisoners of war. It's like being in a prison. That car identifies me, who I am, where I'm at, and I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah, it's like name, rank, and serial number, right?
You gotta if you consider like
Well, I'll just say this:
Your-
like when I do a lot of search and rescue missions on the reservation for native and non-natives, right? And before we can bring in any military helicopters or equipment to help us, we have to get approval through a general because reservations are still considered war zones.
Wow.
So having that is not necessarily a mark of pride then. Or it can
So-
be, or
in you've got it twofold. Like one is like, yep, I'm an enrolled member. These are my people. I'm enrolled, and I'm that's something that they can't take from me. So you've got a sense of pride. On the other hand, when you're looking at the history of
yeah.
how they did that
Yeah.
was because
Yeah.
they were trying to essentially breed you out. And so then that blood quantum lessens and lessens and lessens. And so pretty soon they're not going to have any.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the idea of it. So colonialism was probably not the greatest thing because you have,
Say that
still
15
in
times.
indigenous children who won't ever be able to say that because they've had that mixed.
Right, right.
Do you? Let me return to this hypothetical. Like, I would marry a Arapaho woman on Wind River. I don't become a tribal member, correct?
No.
Okay, but
Spouse.
our children
your
could potentially
children-
become.
Yeah.
If your wife was half, if she was at least half, then your children would be able to be enrolled because you have to have a certain amount of blood quantum before you
Quarter.
could
Yeah.
be enrolled.
Yeah, it's just
And that's specific on what tribe too, correct?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
depends on each tribe.
Because I thought
So
because I,
think
remember like
Eastern
the
Shoshone is
Cherokee
higher.
the Cherokee have a different.
They have a different blood
and-
quantum.
okay.
Yeah.
Who sets that?
The tribes. They get to set their own during their treaty rights and are working their treaties. They got to choose how they wanted to manage their population in their areas.
Yeah.
And so they got to choose how they wanted the blood quantum to work.
So in addition to that, like they have, if like our children, for example, are mixed Northern Arapaho and Ogallala, and then his mom is also from a Quinault Indian. So we've got that mixture and stuff. The Northern Arapaho took all of that blood quantum and made our children be almost like half Indian.
I got
So,
you. I was going I was
yeah.
going to ask about that question. Could you
then-
ever could you ever be from different tribes, but then wind up having not blood quantum because
Right.
you're from different tribes? So
Yes.
they'll accept
So
the indigenous blood.
For my bloodline, though, the Ogallala would only accept the Ogallala blood. So I have some rosebud on my side, but because we're only enrolled in one, I only have Ogallala. That's
Like your
amount.
other indigenous ancestry doesn't count,
didn't count.
to your Indianness?
Right. although I am considered more than half Indian, more than half Native, there it didn't count in my blood quantum. And so the blood quantum I gave to my children was less, but the Northern Arapaho counted all of it and stuff. So, which great, because you know what? You're indigenous, you're indigenous. If you have a family that you came from that was indigenous, please say it loud and be proud about it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard of a marriage? Have you ever heard of a marriage that like was good, or people that were gonna get married, or that were gonna have children, but then the woman or the man was like, I can't do this because because my children will lose their tribal identity, or my children will lose their tribal enrollment because you're from outside, you're not indigenous. Like, is this like a thing that happens when people are finding mates and growing up?
Earlier, I mean, today's date, no, we don't hear of that. But you know, like my grandparents, my parents, maybe, but not. You know, it's kind of
you sometimes hear of how they didn't want to of some tribes didn't want you to marry outside of your race because you would water down your bloodline.
Yeah.
But also, you can't tell people who they can love. So,
Who
so
they
they're
can and
gonna,
can't
you
marry.
know, they're gonna
There's a
love
play
me.
about that.
Yeah.
Shakespeare.
who they can and can't divorce. You know, you got no.
I have a Navajo friend who, though, made it a point she would not marry anyone outside of not just her tribe, but I think there's a smaller level of
And
clan.
they have clans.
Clans.
Yeah.
So she would not even marry outside of her clan.
And that's a big thing. And I mean, if you think about how they raise their children and stuff like that, the Navajo Nation is by far the largest nation of Indigenous people in our country. So, and you know, they keep their numbers the way they want to, but you know, you still have people who trickle out and marry in, and
I mean, this is just a sort of a non sequitur, but I'm always struck, like, with your ID card. I feel like there's a lot of times when you can just sort of walk through the world and think like, oh, this is how things are, and you don't necessarily question things. But I always find that when I'm traveling through a reservation, or like when you pull out that ID card, you realize how profoundly people's individual lives are shaped by policy, and it's like the history is not history. It's there in your wallet, right? Like I don't know. It's always very striking to me that because there's a lot of people out there that can sort of go through the world la-di-da and not have to grapple with like those big questions.
Yep.
Yeah, not just through the world, but through the West.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, drive all around it.
their identity is in their pocket.
Yeah.
You know.
Subject change. You have, because you have management authority over your reservation, wildlife management authority, all kinds of other authorities, but let's talk about wildlife management authority.
Sovereignty, mostly.
Okay.
That's what we want to show the world. We have sovereignty.
So you have sovereignty over this piece of ground. And there are areas in which U.S. law, Wyoming law ends and tribal law picks up. One of the areas that I think is of interest, and I know you guys have done a bunch of work around this, is we have a thing in the U.S. We have the Wild Horse and Burro Protection Act. Okay, because I'm bringing this up because you spent a ton of your career on this issue. We have the Wild Horse and Burro Protection Act, which I'm going to give a little background. Okay, and if I screw this up, feel free to correct me. It was in the 70s.
Yeah. 72 maybe.
Yeah. So, I'm going to go way back. I'm not going to go back to when the Earth's crust first solidified, but I'm going to go back a ways. Wild horses have been on the landscape of the American West. See, now I'm at another crossroads.
Yeah.
If Dan Flores was here, he'd want to be talking about the Pleistocene and Ice Age horses. I'm not going to go back that far. In the 1600s, horses in the 1600s, very late 1500s, 1600s, horses were brought by the Spanish to initially into Mexico. A lot of those horses were brought up into New Mexico, and those horses were proliferated across the West, both as owned horses used by people, and also at that moment was the beginning of the wild horse. Okay, the wild, or depending on your definition, the feral horse, because this
He's
is
shaking his
Feral
head.
horses.
Yeah.
they were brought as livestock. They were brought here as saddle broke domestic livestock,
Yeah.
but they went feral quickly, just like pigs were brought to what is now the United States of America. Some of these pigs have always been owned and bred and kept as livestock, and some of those pigs from day one have always run around as wild pigs. So we have domestic pigs and we have wild pigs. We've had domestic horses and we've had wild horses since the 1600s. For a while, the legal structure was such that you could just go out and catch wild horses and you could sell them to slaughter. And when the prices were pretty good, you could make pretty good money. And during that time, wild horse numbers got down low enough where people that were big wild horse fans thought we need to protect the remaining wild horses. And they made a tragic mistake. I'm editorializing. That was all just history. Now I'm editorializing. They made a tragic mistake in the 1970s, and they established a careful what you wish for thing called the Wild Horse and Burro Protection Act. And they came and said, because there's not that many, and people are being mean to them,
And some people like them.
we hereby declare not only are wild horses wildlife, you cannot touch them. You can't kill them. Which is not something we've done for, we didn't do that for bighorns. We didn't do that for elk. We didn't do that for grizzly bears. We didn't do that for any of our native wildlife, but we bestowed upon the horse this sort of status without anticipating where we'd be today, which is in areas of Nevada, areas of Arizona, areas of Utah.
Most reservations
Where you now have feral horses that are out competing native wildlife and in some cases degrading the landscape. Heffelfinger shared with me, I can't remember where did he write or where he got it. Someone made like if horses were managed as wildlife, here's what management would look like with horses. Right?
Yeah,
a lot of harvest.
How many? Do you know how many are roaming around the Western United States total?
Total? No. So different reservations vary. We don't know the exact numbers of how many other reservations had. You know, we were sitting pretty close to 10, 11,000 feral horses on 2 million acres. Well, you know, actually less than that, like 1 million acres because of the habitat area. And
Yep.
So I think the last I heard, Navajo Nation might have 100,000.
Wow.
The
Yakima was pretty close to 100,000.
Feral horses.
Feral horses.
I've seen a lot of those because of this. This is the last thing I'll say on the background. Because of this little problem they created, that you can't hunt them, you can't send them to slaughter. There's so many of these things now that they're actually taking them to eastern Kansas, other areas where there's good grass growth, hiring ranchers to move out of beef production. And then they take taxpayer money and pay those ranchers to house horses, which they truck from the arid West to, and I drove past a huge ranch that is nothing but a guy that makes his money
babysitting feral horses.
It's just like a sanctuary. They don't use them for any. They don't.
We feed and water them until they die of old age. You know, the average cost in Wyoming, where we're from, for one horse is $9,000 a year.
What?
So the amount of horses that we removed, we figured we'd save taxpayers $72 million.
Okay, with that big old setup now, that was my setup. Is that okay? How did I set that up?
Yeah.
Okay, now let's break off and and explain the situation on your reservation and how you guys dealt with the issue of competition with native wildlife and habitat degradation and like kind of where you were and where you're at now around wild horses, feral horses.
So there's a lot of different issues with feral horses. I mean, it's our livestock producers. Our numbers of livestock producers on our reservation is not very big. Our livestock producers don't have the numbers of private state producers have. So our numbers are really small. We have 90-something range units, so we have 90-something producers, and their herds are 10 to maybe 100. Hopefully they're at 100, making a little bit of money.
You're talking like
Cattle.
raising beef cattle.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So tribal members who are producers. But with that, we also have a ton of wildlife. We have huge pronghorn herd. We have mule deer migrations. We worked with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife in the state to bring in bighorn sheep into certain areas, the Washakie Reservoir area, which is one area we really try to take care of and keep it pristine for the sheep population to grow, because sheep are also having issues. The mule deer are having issues. All of our wildlife are having issues, and then we just we were seeing that the damage that they were doing, and the only thing that was growing back were these big number of horses were at all over the different parts of the reservation, was we were only getting cheatgrass back. And then winters where we had really bad winters, they were demolishing all the sagebrush habitat for mule deer migration areas, and then the wintering areas for our mule deer. And then we started seeing a big decrease on sage grouse and different types of birds on the reservation. So our biologists teamed up with the Bureau of Indian Affairs to say, we really need to do something. We're at a crisis here. I mean, it's getting so bad that we might even have to start taking these range units away from tribal members because there's not enough feed for production of just livestock. And so with that, we came up with a plan where I threw in $100,000 where we were hiring tribal members, so like start catching them and just start removing them. Let's ship them out, and if there's a buyer, there's a buyer. If not, we'll just give them away because there's just too many feral horses just damaging our landscape.
Are you under the obligation to manage them under that? Like they're still protected on the reservation. You can't kill them.
No, they're not protected on the reservation.
So you could.
So you could totally live outside of the Wild Horse and Burro Protection Act.
Yes.
Like you could have built a slaughter plant if you wanted to.
Could have, but I don't know if we wanted to go that route. Were you talking about non-native trespassing? I think we would have had a bunch of them. But and so we started doing big roundups and removing horses. And
can you tell how you caught them?
Well, first we started catching them on horseback, four-wheeler, side-by-sides. We didn't have funding to operate to do these big projects. We didn't have the money obligated to us from anywhere to start doing this.
Well, tell me like I'm 5 years old how you catch them.
So we'd purchase panels. We'd send out a few people on horses, a few people on dirt bikes or side-by-sides, four-wheelers, and to just try to push them down the alley and get them going one way and gather them. We were averaging like 20 a month or so, really small numbers and stuff. But the Bureau of Land Management uses contractors, and so we started meeting with the state of Wyoming and other federal agencies on how we could do this at a bigger rate, because the state was like, those horses are going to be our problem if you can't remove them, because they're not going to stay on the reservation if there's no feed. So there's no boundaries for horses or wildlife. We could show that in our mule deer migration, that they're going to leave the reservation because there's not enough feed.
And the state can't do anything once they're outside the reservation, so they want you guys to succeed in your efforts.
Yeah.
Well, doesn't it a little bit depend on the area too? I don't know. I mean, if one walked out of Wind River onto federal land, is that within wild horse habitat, like what they call the wild horse area? There's
a lot of fencing, and there's a lot. I mean, there wasn't very many horses in those areas like that. So yeah, if they left the reservation and went on to federal property, that's their problem. But we have no problem with that. We'd push them all over there on that side. And so the state chipped in and said, well, we'll help you out. And they gave us enough funding to remove like 1,600 horses. And then Bureau of Indian Affairs stepped in and was like, this is a good project. Let's keep this going. And so 3 years, we ended up removing 7,633 feral horses off the Wind River Indian Reservation. The results of that were overnight results. one area we removed 800 horses off this reservoir that was almost completely dry. I mean, they just demolished that reservoir.
Like they drank it dry.
Yeah, so
drank it
like
dry,
your
trampled
springs, your natural springs and stuff would all kind of meet up at a drainage and then start filling up reservoirs and stuff.
Yep.
Well, they would stomp in those springs and everything else, and the reservoirs would get so full that by middle of summer they'd be completely dry. And we had 800 horses on one reservoir. The contractors pushed those out, and we ended up catching half of those horses that day. And then, the next morning at sunup, we had over 300 elk on that same reservoir.
Because the horses would kick them out.
Yeah. There's no national predator for horses. The grizzly bears won't bother them. Wolves don't bother them. Mountain lions don't bother them.
And elk don't like them.
Elk don't like them. Mule deer don't like them. I'm really excited to see the outcome of the mule deer migration study that we're doing with the University of Wyoming. How if they're going to stay on the same route where they had to stay high and travel off the reservation into the Teton National Forest where they summer. Now they have the ability to go anywhere they want on a reservation because they don't have to compete for food.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a situation where you got to worry about the remaining horses, their population blowing up again? Or is it once you knock them down, they're probably going to stay knocked down?
The horse population doubles every 4 years. So we still have to do our management process of keeping those numbers down.
Yep.
And so, that's like overnight. You'll see 5 or 6 horses, 4 years, that number doubles just that fast. And so we now that we've got to a managing level where we want to sustain between 1,000, 1,500 feral horses on the reservation, we want to do little roundups and do things like the honor farm and everybody else is doing. Well, we could start breaking them. We could start using these horses for some of our backcountry outfitters in the fishing industry, or we could break them and sell them, or use them for something. It's not like we have a mean heart and just want to go in there and destroy this whole population of feral horses. But yeah, and we get it. There's a lot of people on the reservation in the state of Wyoming that still use horses. But with technology and dirt bikes and side-by-sides and four-wheelers, you don't have to use a horse like you used to. And a lot of these horses, we had brands on them, the ones that we caught. That's why I really express
who had branded them?
People from all over the United States. We got brands from Iowa, Nebraska, just all over.
From people dumping them?
Yeah, people dump them, yeah.
I years ago was working on a story about livestock theft, like contemporary cattle rustling. And some of the stock detectives I was hanging out with made an interesting observation to me because I was asking about horse theft. And they said, when we had horse slaughter plants, there's Indiana, Texas had 2. He goes, there was such a thing as horse theft. Now we have the opposite. There's the opposite of horse theft. You don't wake up and see that your horses are gone. You wake up and see that you have new horses. Because people at that time, like, there was no outlet. There was no outlet for lame horses. There was no outlet for old horses. There was a lot of drought that had driven down hay production. And they were too expensive to keep. And so people would just pull up at night and cut horses loose.
So I'm also a livestock investigator on a reservation. And we have issues of that. We know when there's more horses showing up in certain areas. And the biggest thieves on the reservation of stealing horses are the feral horses. They love every brand new panel. They love every brand new gate because they'll go in there and break them. And so they can get to the other mares and the other horses. And so the next thing you know, you got branded horses running around all over and people are saying, well, I know they're not stolen because I seen a herd of feral horses running around.
Got it.
And it became such a big issue. When I say fences and gates, I'm telling the truth. It became such an issue with that many feral horses running around that it became a highway safety issue too. We were getting horses hit on some of our main roads, and that's why we became livestock investigators on the reservation, so we can manage these horses. And you don't know how many fences and stuff that we fixed as a tribal fishing game, and the range unit with Burrow Indian Affairs and stuff like that. They just do a lot of damage, not just to the forage, but also fencing and everything else.
It's so weird and unfortunate that the shift comes when something doesn't have a monetary value
Mm-hmm.
anymore. And I just wonder, what it might take if there is anyone thinking about building or bringing back horse slaughter. I was going to ask you if you've ever, there are people in other countries and other places that are more open and amenable to either consuming horse meat or putting it in dog food or doing something with it that I think most Americans seem adverse.
Do you know where Rocker, Montana is?
No.
If you go over Homestake Pass
Okay.
and you pass through Butte,
Yep.
and then you come to Rocker, Montana.
Uh-huh.
You know those little coffee kiosks?
Yeah.
Like on the vanguard of building coffee kiosks. I'm talking, this woman had a coffee kiosk in the late 90s in Rocker, Montana. It was a novelty to see one back in them days. One day I'm chatting her up as she's making a coffee, and you know what her job was prior to opening a coffee kiosk in Rocker, Montana? She would buy horses for the Japanese market. She would buy good-looking meat horses, and they would fly them on a C-130
Wow.
to Japan live to be cut in Japan. And those horse slaughter plants, was it Illinois or Indiana? There was 2 in Texas.
I think there's one in Illinois. Didn't one blow up?
I don't know, but
Am I
it
thinking
wasn't
of
like
something?
they didn't become federally illegal. It just became impractical and pressured to close them. I think you guys should, I mean, how open are you to a white guy telling you what you Indians are doing?
I'm on the same page. I thought the same thing as myself.
You know what you people ought to do?
I mean, the Italians, I've eaten horse. The Italians make, like they cure horse meat, just like
Well, a lot of them
beef,
got
pork, etc. And Italy's not the only country. where
like
we
after World War
consume
One, there's a lot of horses rounded up and canned and shipped over to Europe because food production was so low over in Europe after World War One. But I remember reading about that. Like, there's this huge craze. People were just going around and grabbing horses and canning them and sending them to Europe.
I can't even remember. I got a friend. I can't remember what year this happened, but he had to go to Uzbekistan for work, and his buddies were like, "Listen, you're going to get there, and they're going to give you a big glass of mare's milk. Just drink it. There's no getting around it." And he gets this big glass of mare's milk, and he's just dreading it. So he just knows, and he slams it. But he did it with too much gusto.
So they poured him another one.
Have some more.
They gave him a refill. And he's like, how many do you think you guys had on the reservation?
Pretty close to 10,000.
And what's a comfortable number?
1,000.
Were some tribal members pissed because they could have gone out and caught horse? Were guys going out and catching them and breaking them?
Yeah. Well, there's no law. There's no act. I mean, both councils did a resolution where a tribal member, if you're enrolled off our reservation, you can go out and catch as many horses as you want, but brand it, and then it belongs to you. And then if it's released, they catch it again, then we have the right for your livestock trespassing. So if you're going to catch it, keep it, sell it, do whatever you want with it. So tribal members can still go out and catch as many as they want.
Okay. But the incentive isn't strong enough for tribe, like the economic incentive isn't great enough to keep up with the production of the horses.
You're going to spend more in fuel and food catching horses than you are going to sell them. And then, like I said, the average cost for a horse in the state of Wyoming is $9,000 a year. It gets pretty pricey if you want to keep and manage horses.
Yeah. So when you buy a horse, I mean, I'm not talking about reservation, but just in general, when you buy a horse, it's not the purchase price that's getting you. It's maintenance.
Well, it depends. If you get a good quality horse, I mean, they're $20,000-$30,000.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then the maintenance after that, I mean, you have to have pretty good hay, make sure, they don't blow up. And
if you're spending that much money on a horse,
Yeah.
you want to make
right.
sure they're
Yeah.
feeding right.
You're
So you're
putting
going
the
to pay
premium
top
in it.
dollar. Yeah.
Yeah. Then you got to do your vet bill. You got brand inspections. You got all, I mean, it's like owning a vehicle. You got to take care of it.
But are any of those, are those feral horses that are on Wind River, do they ever have the potential of being a high dollar saddle horse?
Yes.
They can?
I mean, the horses that were branded, and then, we thoroughbreds, I mean, some big livestock, that they use for bareback and everything, horses that could barely get into our panels because they were so big. Yeah, there's a chance. And you can tell the horses that were there for a longer time were smaller, inbred, not very good horses at all. There's nothing you could have done.
That's what I was
with
going to
those.
ask. Can you look at him and be like, well, that one has some potential to be a workhorse or a riding horse, and that one will never be able to tame that thing.
That horse's head is about the same size of its body. Yeah, you know that inbred horse. You know, yeah. I mean, you can really tell. You can tell the difference. And when you see one that's just beautiful and coming in from a distance, and then when you get it to the trap or the panels, well, there's a brand. Yeah, that could be a pretty good horse. Well, that's running with all these other horses, and it's you can tell. I mean, but when you start dealing with the studs of those different herds,
the truly like wild ones.
The ones that had never been cut or anything else are mean.
Yep.
I mean, they are aggressive. Have you seen a wolf or a mountain lion attack anything where they bite the neck and start shaking their heads and stuff? Those studs are just as mean as any of those other predators. I mean, we've seen studs kill other studs just trying to
Take
keep
over
their
the
mares
herd.
away.
With their teeth.
With their teeth, kicking,
teeth and their
biting,
hooves.
anything they can.
Their hooves are so sharp.
Do you guys keep horses of your own?
No.
You're all
We
done-
used to.
You're
We
done
used
with
to.
horses.
Yep,
Yeah.
we're done.
$9,000 a year.
Yeah.
We no longer play with livestock.
What was the outlet for all the horses you caught?
So we pretty much just gave them away. We gave them to Mexico, Canada, whoever wanted them would take them. We helped pay for the shipping and everything else.
Yep.
They paid for like the vet inspections and everything like that.
Yeah,
too.
it's not a moneymaker. We did the brand inspections. We used the state brand inspectors, state vets. We did everything legal. And we did, we documented everything, and we did the process of the shipping off. Whoever wanted them could take them. If horse sanctuaries wanted them, they could have them. We didn't, as long as they didn't destroying our wildlife habitat.
Yep.
We really didn't care.
So based on the results that you're getting, have other tribes come in to try to learn from the program that you've initiated? I mean, obviously, like outside of Indian country, the Wild Horse and Burro Protection Act prevents anybody from really learning a lesson, but other tribes could implement similar programs, right?
Yeah, and a lot of it is looking for funding, looking for opportunities to get stuff like that up and going. I did the presentation at the Sheep Show in Reno last year, and we had a lot of tribal programs and stuff there. And so, I mean, we're willing to help out whoever, whenever, any other nation. We're willing to help out other tribes.
It's basically finding the funding, having them find the funding to be able to pull off an operation that big,
Yeah.
and then finding the buyers or the transporters to be able to get them to where they need to go.
There's
Yeah.
no real. There's no. It's not a moneymaker. I
Right.
mean, there's no profit into it. It's just.
Yeah, if it was a moneymaker, it probably wouldn't have become a problem.
It
Yeah.
wouldn't have been, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, and like we talk about our conservation ethics. I mean, Wind River was the first one with the Wilderness Act. We were our 1930s. We were before anybody else in the United States.
You guys created a wilderness area?
We were the first ones, the roadless areas. Yep.
Can we back up? Well, I want to hear about this, but I got one final last horse question. If you catch a branded horse, and you're like, what in the world? This horse is from some guy in Colorado. Is he? Can you say to him, listen, man,
Yeah.
come get your horse?
It's like the
So,
dog ID tag.
I'm not going to pay money to ship your horse to you.
So-
Your horse is here. Come get it.
We'll impound those horses. We'll get a hold of the owner through the brand inspection through the state. We'll inform him that it cost me $250 to catch this horse, plus $40 a day for feed and water. So every day that we haul this horse, well, we're going to civilly charge you the amount that it cost us to house this horse and deal with it. Unless you want to come up to Wind River and sign off and saying that the tribes are ownership, then we can do what we want with it. And that's how it usually works. Most of the time, they just sign off on them.
Is that
And then-
right?
Yeah.
Oh, people
They
will
dumped
actually
them there
come
because they couldn't,
versus-
yeah.
Yeah. We
They
have
will
we've
come, huh?
impounded 22, 23 certified quarter horses, and the lady ended up paying almost $25,000 to get them out of impound.
Wow.
How did they lose track? I have a second horse question.
So
How
livestock
did she lose track of all of her quarter horses?
livestock trespassing is still an issue in the West.
She turned them out.
Well, yeah, and depended on somebody else to manage them and take care of them for her. But they got loose, and they got let loose, and
she was like, "Good riddance."
Grass is greener on the other side, and so yeah, they ended up on the reservation, and we impounded them.
Yeah. And they didn't come knocking saying, "Hey, I think my horse is around your place. I should try to go to find them."
No. One time we had 5 semis, and we were going to impound 86 pairs of cows, beef on the reservation that somebody was trespassing on, and so it is an issue. I mean, cattle rustling, everything back in the West, there's still a lot of that going on the reservation. So.
Wind River made a wilderness area?
Yep. First ones.
How did you guys define it? Like, how did it work?
So it was between the tribes, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the Forest Service. It's such a unique area. The Wind River Mountain Ranges is so phenomenal, and they had a meeting about how do we protect this place? How do we keep this pristine? How do we keep it looking like the 1800s and stuff? And so tribes are like, well, we'll just close it all off. So they have areas where they'll never do any production on the reservation. So, when you go up to the fence line, the snow line of certain areas, there's no it's habitat wilderness area. The tribes brought that clear down to the snow line and decided that we are not going to have any production in these areas because we want to protect our wildlife. Okay. And so we'll have no housings, no businesses, no roads, anything else. And so these areas we're going to protect.
How big are some of those areas?
So our wilderness area is like 188,000 acres.
That's great, man.
And that's huge.
And that's probably sheep country too.
Yeah,
right?
sheep country. Well, moose, mule deer. Those high country mule deer, a lot of elk habitat areas and stuff.
Man, I want to come hunt this place now. Who do I got to talk to?
Man.
You got to become reborn in a different...
Well, I'm not going to marry you.
You had a guy that did put a monetary value on a sheep tag, right? Like you had...
A few.
They could be quite valuable.
A few, yes.
Yeah.
Especially at the sheep show. I mean, we take care of some of the biggest wild sheep herds in the lower 48s with the state of Wyoming. Mm-hmm. And same thing, they migrate on and off the reservation and stuff. And so we do a tremendous amount of work with bighorn sheep. I mean, it's pneumonia, the disease that domestic sheep give to wild sheep and stuff like that.
Is there domestic sheep on the reservation, or is it
mostly surrounding the reservation on the state side? There was a few domestic sheep back in the day, but there's no value marketing of that either. So we do a lot of work with the state and the feds and stuff to protect those sheep herds and stuff. So,
how many bighorns might be on the reservation at any given time? At the right time of year. I don't know what the right time of year is, but
a couple thousand.
Okay.
Wow. Oh, wow.
And they're using your land. Using Wind River winter or summer?
Winter.
I see.
They start moving in the fall, and some like the big rams, they don't even leave the area. They'll stay there all year. A lot of the ewes, they migrate back and forth different places.
Yeah.
And then it also depends on predator situations, wolves, everything else that's chasing them around and stuff. It's wildlife. You don't really know what they're going to do. I mean, but we do have a good population of sheep.
With your buffalo program, are you trying to bring in sort of tribally owned, free ranging herds, or are you trying to establish tribal members as producers for the market?
Both.
Okay.
Both. One of the big reasons why we wanted to remove feral horses is so that there was forage to release buffalo on our reservation, so tribal members can have the opportunity to harvest.
Okay.
Like we used to.
Traditional.
And then we also there's a few producers that want to go into the buffalo market, and the tribes already have. There's 2 herds right now. The Eastern Shoshone and Northern Arapaho each have their own herds that they're trying to grow and release so tribal members can harvest. Right now, when we do harvest, it's usually we have a tribal youth come in and do it and stuff like that. And so we make it a huge educational experience for the tribal youth and elders to come in and talk about it and relive history.
What time of year does that happen?
It happens in different parts of the year. We're actually going to do another one here pretty soon. I think in a couple of weeks.
Would you ever let us come down and watch that?
So to me, yeah, I mean, that'd be great, but I get everything approved through both councils. I work for both tribes. And so I have to ask permission from them for approval for anything.
Yeah. It'd be cool to talk to the kids and stuff who are involved.
Yeah, and our youth program that we do on the reservation is that we have more pride in that than we do catching Burro horses.
Do you have tribal members that come up and do the hunt out of the park here?
Gardner,
Yeah.
Gardner.
He did it 1 year too.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Not a
talking
big fan.
Tell me what you mean.
You show up to one little area, you wait for the buffalo to migrate, and then you stand in line and
There's not a.
Shoot.
Oh, so you're not a big. I didn't know if you meant you're not a big fan of that management strategy, but you mean just the experience isn't.
Yeah. I want to harvest buffalo. I want to go out and go earn it and work for it and do it, like we do elk or deer or everything else.
Can I give a little background on this, and then again you can correct me if I screw something up.
Yeah, good.
All right, so we've talked about this a bunch over the years, but I don't know, man. If you go back to I guess it'd be the late '90s, buffalo numbers in Yellowstone National Park got up enough. Like a good way to think about it is they can usually hold 3,000 or 4,000. This is a generally accepted number, but now and then it'll jump. It'll be 7,000 or 8,000, and when they get to certain numbers in the park, and you get to a certain severity of winter in the park, the animals will move out of the park. They'll go out into West Yellowstone area, and they'll come out the north entrance into the upper Yellowstone Valley, into Gardner. Historically, like of all native wildlife, that's the only one that loses its wildlife status as it crosses a boundary, meaning grizzly bear, wolverine, elk, bighorn sheep, mule deer, whitetail deer, pronghorn antelope, any of these animals, if he leaves the park, he remains wildlife, right? The minute a buffalo leaves Yellowstone National Park, even though it's native wildlife, the minute it walks out of the park, it fell under the jurisdiction of the Department of Livestock. It became like free-ranging livestock. You don't like this?
I don't like the rabbit hole you're going down to because I could sit here for days and go over this issue.
Okay. Well, I'll back out of the rabbit hole. I'm just trying to lead up to this.
Right.
Some years it got to where in Montana, it got to where the Department of Livestock was shooting a bunch of them. And they'd shoot them, they'd catch them, send them off to slaughter. And after a while, I think it was in the early 2000s, a bunch of tribes in the West, like any tribe that had a historical claim to presence on that landscape. And there could be the Nez Perce, who would come from Washington and Idaho, and they would come in that area. The Sioux would come in that area. There's like a history of the Blackfeet coming in that area, like all over. The Flathead tribe, right? Salish, like all these people.
And it's all part of their treaty rights.
Yeah, they would all utilize the area, and so a bunch of tribes. Maybe this is my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong. A bunch of tribes said, "Listen, if you're going to be doing all this harvest, our tribal members are going to come exercise treaty rights, and we're going to do some harvest." And they do the tribal hunts. Like tribes have, they just come when that's the right time when they're coming out. And then the state also conducts like a public draw hunt, which usually comes later in the year. Is that all fairly okay?
Yeah.
But now, what was the part? I said something that you didn't like the sounds of.
It's a rabbit hole. I mean, I could issues all day long with how buffalo are treated through livestock and the brucellosis issues and everything else. There's still not one case scientifically proven that a buffalo ever gave livestock brucellosis.
No, it's a red herring.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's a thing that people bring up because it's like people bring up brucellosis because it's easier than bringing up what they're really talking about. What they're talking about is competition with cattle.
Mm-hmm. That's all about money. Yeah.
Fencing issues, but they say brucellosis. Like, okay, well, if brucellosis is the issue, then why don't we kill every elk?
Yeah.
Why is no one talking about killing every elk who also has brucellosis?
Exactly.
Right.
It's like how this brucellosis thing is still discussed blows my mind.
Mm-hmm.
When it's not happened and elk have it. If you came in Montana and you ran on, if a politician in Montana came and said, I got an idea, there's a risk that elk will pass brucellosis to cattle, so we'd like to kill all the elk.
There's a lot of cattle and elk sharing the landscape.
Right.
No one, like, people would be like, are you insane?
But
you can say it with buffalo.
Well, yeah.
Well, and you can say feral horses are wild horses, and they're good for the habitat area. They're not. We have scientific proof that that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how can certain groups have the ability to stop and manage and stop things from happening? You know, it doesn't make any sense to me. You know, like I said, we really take pride in our conservation ethics and stuff. And so, again, maybe 30 years from now, oh yeah, feral horses are a bad idea. Let's get rid of them.
Yep. What would be a perfect scenario for you? Like if you think of a wild, tribally owned buffalo herd on Wind River, what would be a number? What would be a number of animals that would be plausible
For buffalo herd?
Yeah.
Oh, it'd be in the thousands.
You think so?
Oh yeah.
So you could have a herd that would rival the size of Yellowstone's.
Oh yeah, we'd have an area. We have areas big enough that we could migrate from south of the Big Wind and head north into the Owl Creek Mountain Range and stuff, and then come back. You know, they'd have enough room to roam a lot of that area.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a couple thousand buffalo would be a lot better than 10,000 feral horses.
Sure, man.
And you know how good what buffalo, how good they are for the environment and how they bring back the forage and make everything better. You know, it would, if we could get those numbers up and release them and start moving buffalo in right away, I think our forage and our landscape would turn around and come back faster than what we're planning on doing with Fremont County Weed and Pest, is spraying, rejuvenant, and trying to grow back that doesn't exist there anymore.
Yeah. How would you get them? Are you guys eligible to get park ones?
So right now,
Yellowstone ones?
Jason Baldus is doing a phenomenal job. He's getting like our own quarantine facility and everything else. I mean, this guy is killing it on bringing the buffalo back and doing a phenomenal job of bringing them back. And so I think.
And he's tribal member.
Yeah, he's an Eastern Shoshone tribal member.
Okay.
And then Northern Arapaho, he kind of oversees both programs, the Shoshones and Arapahos. And he goes after all the funding and helps bring back purchase land and range units from Bureau of Indian Affairs to manage these buffalo.
Got it. And if you were to have tribal members become producers too, to sell in, that would be a totally separate program. Or would the two programs kind of meld in some way?
They'd probably kind of meld in some way. I mean, we would definitely have to kick back in Bureau of Indian Affairs to help manage that and oversee everything and stuff, make sure the range units, the fencing, everything is up, protected, and built right. So.
Yeah. But there are guys that maybe do beef now that would like to go into that market.
There's a few that we know of. Yeah. We've been in conversations with a few because I also have to do a lot of work with the livestock producers on the reservation too.
Yeah. Does a livestock producer on the reservation, does he have to lease grazing rights from the tribe?
Lease grazing rights in different range units.
Okay.
So there's like 90-something different range units on the reservation. Some are shared, some are just one producer, but.
Yeah. Help me understand this question for both of you. How do you feel? Like if I say, what do you think if I say Indian? What do you think if I say Native American? What do you think if I say Indigenous? Am I saying to you, is it all the same word? Or is there a way that you'd prefer, not how you talk about you, is there a way you prefer me to talk about you? To you, to Randall? Like, is there a word that I say that you're like disappointed that I would say that word?
Not to me.
No, but to him. If I said, let's say I said,
if you were having a private conversation between you and Randall.
This morning I would say to Randall, we have some Indians coming.
And he would say, do you mean Indians or Indians?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which
Red dot
are you talking
Indian
about?
or
What
feathered
type
Indian?
of Indians are you talking about? Whereas if you say, we're talking to an Indigenous couple today. She's from South Dakota and he's from Wyoming, or two Native Americans coming. I mean, that's
better.
the better way, I would say. I don't know. You're going to talk the way you're going to talk, and nobody's going to tell you. But at the same time,
I can and I do,
you know?
but I'm asking.
Yeah.
I'm just asking.
If you didn't realize where your audience was, like who is standing behind you
Mm-hmm.
as you were saying it, how would you say it? You know, that's your internal compass
Yeah.
telling you how you should address people.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think where I find confusion about it, and the reason I'm asking, and I think, and I can tell you, I can promise you, in my world, the confusion and sort of apprehension is widespread, right? Because you'd hear, you hear a politician, you hear a tribal member say Indian country.
Mm-hmm.
I would have a very hard time saying I was over in Indian country. Like I don't know. That strikes me as somehow.
It's more of the historical commonplace
Mm-hmm.
that it's been called Indian country. If you think about it in terms of what it actually is, they're more of internment camps.
Mm-hmm.
And
even-
we're still living on federal land that is given to us, and we're going to call it, and the federal government's going to call it Indian country.
Yeah.
Well, even on every old map that you see, I mean, in the history books, those lines, everything is Indian country.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the names of the different tribes and stuff there. So through history, it's always been called Indian country, through the wars and everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had, I guess I find myself casually saying like Randall and I will be like Indigenous, Native American, Indian. I don't know. It's just like,
Yeah.
I just wouldn't want to say, I'm just
Yeah.
asking because
Yeah.
I want to know.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
my next question. Does it bother you that I'd ask?
No, not at all.
So
Really,
it's more
it says
surprising.
ask.
It's more surprising that somebody would ask, that somebody did ask.
Yeah.
Well, I could also see you thinking, do I really have to tell you this?
It's like,
I think for us, because we're working on historical projects, right? And I think our best practice has always been like when you can specify someone's individual identity or their tribal identity, that's the best practice, right? And recognize that person and who they are. But a lot of times when we're going through primary sources, you just get a reference to, we saw an Indian, and so you're sort of left maybe guessing as to who that is, but it's just something that we run into in the work that we do in terms of our writing projects.
Right.
We've even put that sort of clarifier in. We did a American history piece on the deerskin trade of the eastern seaboard in Appalachia, and that was called like the Long Hunters, and it was 1763 to 1775, and it focused on the deerskin trade. And in explaining the landscape, like how we're going to talk about it, we talked about where possible, identify like the individual, where possible, identify the tribe. But oftentimes when dealing with descriptions of written record, it's just, there is no tribal identification.
right.
And right now we're working on one about the mountain man era, which is like the beaver skin trade. So the height of the beaver market, which we kind of bracket off as being, I don't know, the end bracket is 1840. The beginning bracket is like somewhere around 1804, 1810, like the height of the beaver skin trade, when these were incredibly valuable and there was this big push of people in to catch beavers, trade for beavers. We again say that we try to use tribal identification, like who, but at times, like we get in this thing, like this one guy in his journal, it's just Indians. So we'll point out, like, no idea who he's talking about.
Well, you'll have to let me know. I have a strong familial background in the trades of the beaver trading, the fur traders and stuff.
Oh, really? Tell me about that.
My ancestors were a couple of French trappers who married Lakota women.
Oh, really?
And they came from St. Louis.
No kidding.
Yep. Antoine and Nicholas Janice. So,
Have you run into those names?
I'm going to keep my eye out for him now.
So, part of the history of it is Antoine Janice actually homesteaded in the Poudre Valley and near LaPorte by Fort Collins. His cabin still stands.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And he was moved by the cavalry back to the Pine Ridge Reservation. Him and his brother Nicholas, and Nicholas is my direct descendant.
Oh, wow.
And stuff. So, yeah, they both married Lakota women, and they both died on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation.
Really? Huh.
Yeah.
We'll keep our eyes peeled.
Yeah.
Tell me the names again.
Antoine and Nicholas Janice.
Okay. And then what is so on the Oglala Sioux side of your family, what was the, like, when you go back to like matriarchs, what was your family's name?
They didn't.
I guess like maid, however you think of, like, what the equivalent of maiden names or whatever.
So some of them, there is a correlation of a descendant to the one of the wives, and I can't remember if it was Antoine's or Nicholas's wife, was the niece of Red Cloud, of Chief Red Cloud.
Okay.
So I guess that kind of correlation.
Yeah, because there's not like a in the culture, there's not like a last name structure, right?
Right.
A lot of them come from the different chiefs. Like my family on the Northern Apple side, we all come from Chief Friday. So when I'm related to every Friday on the reservation, and I'm related to every Hanway, and I'm related to pretty much almost everybody on every Arapaho on the Wind River Indian Reservation.
Yeah. But with the Arapaho too, there wasn't you know how like we track like a
family tree or
like generally you go like we're sort of patrilineal in name, meaning it's like this series of fathers' names and maiden names fall away. In Native culture, in the Western tribes we're talking about, there's not a way by a name. I mean, if we talk about Red Cloud, we talk about Crazy Horse, there's no thing in the name
that travels on
that captures your ancestry, correct?
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
No.
Each person takes an individual name that doesn't carry with it who your dad was, who your mom was.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a colonial structure.
Yeah.
And we didn't start, like on my side, we didn't really start seeing ours until, what was it? Paul Bridger. My grandpa's brother was named Paul Bridger after Bridger, the famous.
Yeah, Jim
trapper.
Bridger. Because Jim Bridger married his third wife was Shoshone.
Yep. And so like my oldest brother, his name is Bridger.
Really?
You don't hear that. Somebody was born in the early 70s and stuff, but he was the only one around forever. Now it's kind of a common name. But
there's a lot of Bridgers in the Shoshone.
Well, just in public, anywhere, even off the reservation.
Because around here, you get kids. People name their kids. Their first name's Bridger, but you guys got people whose last name is Bridger.
And Wind River, Riverton area is one of the bigger rendezvous sites that ever used to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so we used to have a lot of rendezvous there. And now it was a Shoshones, Rapos, Cheyenne, Sioux. Everybody used to come there for a rendezvous. And so trapping was pretty big in the area. And I remember growing up trapping beaver, bobcats, everything else. Growing up, we didn't have cell phones or anything else to do back in the day.
Are there many tribal fur trappers left?
No, it's really decreasing. It's sad to see. I mean, it's something that a lot of us grew up seeing and stuff. And as you see the generations of people leaving, it's kind of declining pretty fast.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
But you said there is an
There's a
interest
few.
in hunting from the younger members.
Yeah, there's definitely big interest. Well, we're doing a lot of work, so I hired a youth coordinator to go in and make efforts and to get into the youth involved. And so we teamed up with a nonprofit to help sponsor fly fishing and any different fishing events. We put on huge classes, and so we just wanted to get involved the youth some way somehow to protect, to have a passion for the outdoors and our natural resources. So we're just trying to prepare for the future. So when we're all gone, that somebody comes in, takes our place, and then all the tools they need to succeed is already there.
And they care about the place.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, you're not going to be in charge of your natural resources and do a good job if you don't care for it.
How are predators managed? Coyotes, etc.
There's no. I mean, we have a wolf season. There's nothing on coyotes or mountain lions or anything else. We have a black bear season, but still, I think we might get a handful of black bears harvested every year.
How many wolves is anybody getting after? Do you got any guys that like to hunt wolves?
We've got a lot of guys that like to hunt wolves. To harvest one doesn't happen.
Wolves are tricky.
Sounds like
So
Montana.
you don't have a high harvest rate. Did you at first?
Nope. Well,
Not
we've never had one harvested during our seasons.
Wow.
How long is your season?
It's January to February.
Oh. Do you know of guys that try calling?
Oh yeah, they tried everything. The unique thing about we don't. When you go to different areas and you see different areas, the wolf population is just blowing up. It's growing.
Yeah.
Ours is not really blowing up or getting out of control. Even though we have less pressure on wildlife and hunting and everything else, and big herds of wild game, elk, mule deer, unlimited whitetail. We just don't have that population growth on and around the reservation.
Got it.
And so when we deal with grizzly bears and stuff, we know the population is growing. We see them all the time. We see them on every trail camera. We see mountain lions on every trail cameras, but we do not have the issues that the state does just on the other side of that boundary, on the other side of that creek.
How many grizzlies do you guys think you have at any given time?
It's so hard to determine. I mean, I'm seeing them more and more every year in places we've never seen them before.
Do you think it's closer to 10 or closer to 100?
Well, I'd closer to 50.
That splits the middle, don't it?
Yep.
So maybe about 50.
Pretty
And here's
close.
the crazy thing. If you guys wanted to, and you had a try, you could, there's nothing legally preventing a tribal member from hunting a grizzly, right? Because the Endangered Species Act wouldn't legally restrict you.
That does still cover eagles
Reservations.
and migrating birds and grizzly bears is covered under the.
Also, ESA, the Endangered Species Act, does apply to tribal lands.
Yes.
Right.
Huh. Does that ever create a pain point for you guys for management? Or is it not an issue?
Not an issue.
I had no idea.
Yep. I mean, we'll eventually be to that point where it is an issue where we might have the population doubling and issue attacks and stuff. But I don't even think we have one record attack on the reservation with human and grizzly bears.
Yep. How about livestock loss?
A few.
But
Yeah.
not a huge problem.
It's so hard to determine what killed livestock. Was it a wolf? Was it a lion? Because a bear's going to come in and take over and eat on it anyway.
Yeah. So you can't go by who's standing there when you get there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is going to be a bear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And have you ever watched wolves and stuff? Sometimes they just kill for fun. They don't kill to eat and to manage a herd or anything. They just kill for fun. We've watched them take down elk and mule deer and just leave them, and then the coyotes and the wolves, bears will come in and finish, eating the animal, eating on the carcass. So.
We do a podcast. We do limited releases of a podcast for kids, and in one of the sections, we kind of explain different history or biology things. I was making a list of stuff for upcoming episodes with Corinne the other day, and I thought about but did not include, and now I might put it on there, is the surplus killing.
Mm-hmm.
When predators go a little gangbusters. They get a little carried away. Not in their mind, but in our mind, they get a little carried away.
Yeah.
I don't know what's in their mind.
It's all subjective.
It's in their mind. It's probably
They're just like,
Wow.
why are
This
these things
This
still
is a
standing
perfectly
around?
appropriate amount of elk to kill.
In their
We're
mind, it's
managing
just
the herd.
this is
Yeah.
what I do.
Yeah.
This is what I do.
We spend a lot of time with the youth with gun safety, ethics, a lot of hunter safety, survival. Just and we take tribal youth hunting. Game warden will go out with them, and we'll go out and try to harvest some elk and stuff like that. But we
Yep.
spend a majority of our time with ethics and gun safety. And so, with the fishing, we bring in trout in the classroom. We take them ice fishing, just fly
Oh, is that
fishing
right?
and stuff. Oh yeah, we do a lot. We ended up taking 50 tribal youth to an ice fishing event at Washington Reservoir, one of the big areas where we removed feral horses. And on the way up, all we seen was mule deer, a herd of elk, and then on top was a big herd of sheep. And all the kids were out there catching ice fishing, catching cutthroats all day long.
That's
So it was a
great.
blast.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. How many kids do you think are participating in your program?
Right now, I bet because we're in every tribal school, and there's 4 tribal schools out there, and we're trying to reach out to the surrounding state schools that have house tribal youth in them. We're probably working with around 300 or 400 kids.
Yeah.
And so with that success, we decided to start up a tribal female program too. And so we're doing the same
really?
thing with tribal females. Yeah, we get them outdoors hiking,
Of any age.
any age and any tribe. We'll take on any tribal female to come out and join us.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
It's really cool with the kid program that you can see that you would be able to grow. I mean, because you guys got a good resource, you got a good management strategy. The landscape's getting better with the absence of horses. That you'd have more and more tribal kids get introduced to going hunting. You know.
We got tribal youth making their own YouTube videos and stuff.
Oh,
there's
yeah.
kids outdoors, and they're starting their own fly fishing clubs, their own fishing clubs, and stuff like that.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, no, it's going really good.
That's great.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations.
Thanks.
We can talk about more, but I don't know. I would love to see some of that. I mean, just to hang out and check it out would be cool.
Oh yeah, I mean, we put out everything on social media on our Shoshone and Arapaho Tribal Youth page and
Oh,
stuff like
okay.
that.
There is a place. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And good luck with the Buffalo program. That sounds exciting.
Yeah, we're all excited about it. I mean, I'm sure there's a few livestock producers worried about it and stuff, but
Is that right?
yeah, with tribal fishing game, Burrow, and Indian affairs, we plan on making it work for both ends. I think we can sustain both buffalo
types
and
of
livestock.
livelihoods.
Yeah. So you have some producers that are worried about the loss of grazing lands.
Yeah.
Got it. How will a conflict like that resolve?
Either the buffalo program will come in and pay more for those leases and stuff, and then start managing them better. But that's one of the issues that we're working on now is how to compensate for those producers' loss.
Mm-hmm. When you mentioned that you would do it through the tribal council, can you quickly lay out what that means?
So there's Eastern Shoshone, Northern Arapaho.
Mm-hmm.
They have their own different programs, tribes, operations they have to manage every day on a day-to-day basis, and then they have to come together a few times out of the month to manage law and order codes, tribal fishing game. What else is there? There's like 3 other different programs that they transportation and stuff that they have to manage together, and so it's a joint effort for both tribes to work on to manage a lot of the natural resources on the reservation.
Have you ever been a council member?
No.
Is that like a no? Like
I take it
wanna
you
do
don't
that?
have any interest in it.
Does that job get a little hot?
That will
Yeah.
never happen.
It gets a little hot.
It's a politician job. This job I have is a politician's job, and I've only wanted to be a game warden. I mean, that was the highlight of my career. Was you'd wake up and I got 2 million acres. Where do I want to go today?
Mm-hmm.
And you go see some of the best natural resources in the lower 48.
I forgot to ask you about that earlier. When you were doing work as a game warden, what would be a common, like, I don't imagine, because you guys have allocations and game allocations, you're probably not out busting tribal poachers, right?
Few. Yeah, there's some. It
What
does
would be an
happen.
example of that?
Hunting outside of the regulation time.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. So even though you
One-
got a good elk allocation, you're out hunting in the summer. Or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, all that, and then over harvesting
Or
bulls.
over-harvesting.
I mean, we got phenomenal trophy animals, and so
Mm.
you already punched your tag. Why are you punching another one, or are trying to get another one? Or
And waste.
waste. You just take the antlers, not the meat and stuff. And it happens everywhere. So.
Just same old stuff as anywhere.
Yeah.
I got
Did
it.
you get when you were a game warden? Did you guys have like a constant kind of working relationship with the Wyoming game wardens that kind of work the surrounding area? Like if things were going on like near the border or like people were where they weren't supposed to be, were you like, do you have guys you'd call up like you had a working relationship with them?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're all in the same. If you know anything about law enforcement, we kind of work together as a team, and then a lot of us, like me and the other wardens, are from BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs, police officers, and so not only with the state wardens and everybody else, but with the FBI, Fremont County sheriffs, Lander Police, Riverton Police, and everybody else, and so it's kind of good to have that network in a small populated area like that, so we can communicate and eliminate a lot of these big problems.
Yep.
So if you're a tribal member and you're fulfilling the role of a game warden on reservation land and you catch a tribal member in violation, is it the same old thing? Like they'd be like, depending on the severity of the crime, there's a financial fine, there's like a loss of privileges. Like, does the sort of toolkit of enforcement look similar?
Yeah. We have criminal jurisdiction over tribal members, any tribal member, any recognized tribal member in the United States, and so we can prosecute through tribal court. And then, we have taken hunting rights away for 5 years. We've it's a lot of the same. I guess we didn't really invent the wheel, but we kind of mirrored off of what the state was doing.
Like you can confiscate equipment, like all the kind of normal things that would happen if you do something real bad.
Yep.
Yeah. Is there anything I didn't ask about that you wish we would have asked about?
Not really. I mean,
is there anything I asked about you wish I hadn't asked
That's
about?
what I was going to say.
Are you comfortable or uncomfortable being called Indian? No, I mean, if there's anything else, there's a lot of information out there that people don't know about reservations, and in particular the Wind River Indian Reservation and stuff. And
I think I'm speaking for a lot of people when I say that myself included don't know shit about reservations.
Right.
They're over there.
They're over there.
You're driving along. This is all Indian reservation.
Well, and a lot of it too is a lot of bad press. What you see on reservations, we don't get a lot of good press of some of the success that we are having and what we are doing. I can tell you one thing: the success of removing feral horses has gone pretty big in the state of Wyoming. A lot of non-native support of what we're doing, and a lot of conservation efforts, and giving out information to everybody, in other states and other tribal programs, other state programs, other agencies and stuff, to see the results of and the comeback of natural resources from removing feral horses. That's one of the best positive feedbacks I've ever got working for the tribes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I'd like to give you more positive feedback on the youth programs. That's exciting.
Yeah, and we just want it to grow and get bigger.
Yeah, man. And again, good luck on the buffalo thing. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come down anytime. We're only 6 hours away.
Yeah. Come look around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Come for a visit. Not hunt.
No, but you can cook a meal.
Take you fishing.
We'll buy a fishing license.
Didn't you live in Thermopolis for a short time?
Yeah, I spent
Could
some
he
time
shoot
in Thermopolis,
coyotes?
yeah.
That's a different thing.
No.
Fishing
So
only.
it's all protected.
Yeah.
I was recently down at Zuni Pueblo in New Mexico, and I went out with those guys, and they were out hunting, and they're like, not even a rabbit, buddy.
Sorry. I don't get to hunt there either. So I've lived there most of my life. I don't get to hunt there either.
Oh, is that right?
Mm-mm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, really? You can't get her a pass? You guys are married.
I can go with him. There's a spousal permit that I can be on the mountain with him and stuff, but I can't hunt. Yeah.
Huh.
Me and the kids are enrolled, so we don't let her shoot anyway.
Yeah. Well, I just help them pack out their meat. That's what I'm there for.
Yeah.
And then they have to get me to go because all you guys want me to do is pack out meat.
Yeah. Do you guys eat a lot of wild game?
That's all we eat.
No. No beef?
We don't.
You don't raise any beef?
We don't raise any beef. I come from a strong family of cattle ranchers and stuff, but once I married him, that's all we've ever eaten and stuff. We have a freezer full of elk, and I'll buy
buffalo.
chicken occasionally.
Yeah, that's a conversation in my household too.
Yeah.
My kids would be like, "Mom bought chicken."
Mom bought chicken. Did you see that pork loin in the fridge?
All right, man. Well, I want to thank both of you for coming on. This has been real educational. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Thank you.